What's going on, everybody? Welcome into 104.3 The Fans Halftime Show presented by Coors Light. He's James Marilat, Jake Shapiro. I'm Will Peterson. A very eventful half at Empower Field at Mile High. Probably the least boring first half we've had all year, but for a variety of reasons. The Broncos, of course, get down 27-0 and then decide they want to play with a little pride. And this thing's now 27-14 at the half. Jerry Jeudy with 2 touchdowns. Guys, I just tweeted it. So, James, I'll start with you. Where's this been all year, the last 6 minutes? Where was this at 2:05? Why did the Broncos decide to show up at 3:05? It's going to be too little too late. They're not going to win this game. But what we just witnessed in the last half hour has me perplexed that they somehow do have that in them.
Well, part of it is, if you go back to the game against Jacksonville in London, remember when they had the long drive and they went up tempo, and it's like, man, this is a little bit of spark. You haven't seen it since, right? Well, once you're down 27-0, you're going to stop giving the ball to Latavius Murray, and Mike Boone went out with the injury, and it's like, okay, we're just going to have to let Russ run around and try and make plays. And all of a sudden you get a little something going, right? Like Russell Wilson's their leading rusher by a ton. He's got 43 yards rushing in the first half. Next is Latavius Murray with 14. I think that's part of it. And, when you're up 27-0, if you're Kansas City, it's hard not to take your foot off the gas a little bit too. I think that's a piece of this of, it's Travis Kelce laughing on the bench. I think you kind of start coasting. So, hey, they got a little something going. And I think if you look at the last 5 games of the season, starting with today, it's like, okay, what are you hoping to find out, right? There's not a young quarterback. There's not really even a lot of young players you want to see get some time. So you're trying to search for things. I think the number one thing you're looking for if you're a Broncos fan is that Russell Wilson isn't toast. That's what you're looking for. You got a glimpse in the first half, and I've been trying to tell people that I'm not saying he's not a problem, but he's the least of their problems. Russell Wilson can still make plays. Russell Wilson can still play quarterback. He can still do it at times when he's got something around him at a high level. That's a good takeaway. You're right. It's too little too late. They're not going to win this game. They're going to make it somewhat interesting, and maybe they can do something with the first possession of the first half and make it really interesting. But that's the main takeaway. Russell Wilson can still make some plays. That's a positive for sure.
Yeah, you can't spot a Super Bowl contender 27 points before you start playing. But we saw this a little bit last week, guys, and we've been so critical on this halftime show of the Broncos defense has been good at not allowing points, but they haven't been a great defense, forcing turnovers, setting up the Broncos offense. Last weekend, we saw them get 2 interceptions. This weekend, we've seen them get 2 interceptions again, and both of those interceptions have led to shorter fields and the Broncos scoring points. So this defense is coming through, which is funny to say in the game that they're allowing 27 points, which is one of their worst games of the year. But they've set up the Broncos offense well against this Patrick Mahomes team. And on James's point, what are we hoping to see the rest of the year? Young players, right? One of the players that we came into this year with a ton of question marks about was Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy's got 2 touchdowns in this game. And quietly, if you look at his season, Jerry Jeudy's been pretty solid. Like, he hasn't been Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but he's been pretty solid. So I think that's honestly a really small positive in this really bad Broncos season is Jerry Jeudy's a legit NFL receiver.
All right, well, we can't talk about all good because it wasn't all good, but that's where we had to start because I thought we'd come on here down 30-0 or 35-0. 27-14. But guys, they didn't show up for the first hour of the game. Lots of boos at Empower Field at Mile High. Obviously, McKinnon has 2 touchdowns. The first one by Mahomes was just classic Mahomes wizardry. The pick 6 from Russ, I saw Zach By tweeted, that's kind of the image of the season, right? Him just getting stiff-armed as the guy takes the ball to the house on a bad pick 6. James, out of all the scoring to make it 27-0, what stood out the most and what was the most frustrating for you as a Broncos fan?
It was the pick 6, but look, I mean, if you watch the play, it's just a jailbreak, right? It's a 4th and 1 call. They're trying to, desperately get back in the game down 20-0. They run a boot that doesn't fool anybody because they can't run the football, right? It's 4th and 1, and the defense doesn't buy the play action. Like that tells you everything you need to know. Russ has got somebody in his face before Brandon Johnson is open. So point number 2, your go-to guy on 4th and 1 down 20-0 is Brandon Johnson, who spent 4 weeks just out on the street this season. So it just is the epitome of it. Like, Russ had to throw the ball early. Guy makes a tremendous play. It turns into a pick six. Like, yeah, that does kind of encapsulate the season. The first touchdown by Mahomes, I mean, part of you just has to sit there, even as a Broncos fan, and just marvel at that play of like, okay, what are you going to do if you're Justin Simmons? Just a great play. But yeah, the pick six makes it 27-0, makes it a laugher at that point, makes it embarrassing. Travis Kelce's on the bench laughing at you in your home building. That's the play that was so frustrating. I don't put it on Russ, though. I know he threw it, but he either throws the ball early and tries to make a play, or he takes a sack on 4th and 1. It's a little bit like Melvin Gordon's fumble in Seattle in the opener. It's 4th and goal, and you get hit at the 3-yard line. You can just get tackled and turn it over on downs, or you can lunge for the end zone and, the ball gets knocked out. That one was just a poor design, poor execution. It's a sieve of an offensive line. That play summarizes the failure of George Paton. He's the guy who brought in the coach who designed that play and called that play, and he's the guy who brought in the players who were on the field trying to execute that, which was laughable. It was a practice squad out there. It looked like the scout team trying to run a play against the Chiefs defense. That's the one that frustrated me the most.
And I understand where you're coming from, James. And I like what you said about it's kind of like that Seattle fumble where they're already desperate. So to me, that didn't bother me as much of a low light as it was, and as much as that image will be burned in my head. I go back to the start of this streak where the Chiefs throw that offensive lineman touchdown, right? At the end of the game in the blowout to run it up. Like, that image is stuck in my head. The circus throw from Mahomes is going to be stuck in my head in terms of Broncos' futility during this 13-game losing streak and likely to be 14-game losing streak to the Chiefs. We've got Andrew Mason, who knows a lot more about football than me, the entire game texting us, why are the Broncos blitzing on 3rd down? Why are the Broncos blitzing on 3rd down? They blitzed on 3rd down on that play. They over-pursued. They didn't contain Patrick Mahomes, and look what happened.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's go bigger picture, though, because, James, you mentioned George Paton. Like, I thought, I tweeted, there's no way Hackett survives this when they were down 27-0. And I also said, how is George Paton safe? Because we heard Adam Schefter say with Mike and Mark this week that George Paton is safe. Are they going to talk themselves into keeping Hackett another week and Paton safe because they showed a little bit of life here at the end of the first half? Like, where's your head on this? Is there any chance Hackett gets fired? And did the last half hour give George Paton ammo to go to Greg Penner and say, oh, see, this is what it looks like when we're clicking?
No, well, look, no, but the next hour and a half is going to determine it, right? Like, raise your hand if you think this can't turn out to be 48-14. It could very easily turn into that. This thing could get ugly. The fact that now the Chiefs still have to keep trotting Mahomes out there and they're going to, keep the foot on the gas pedal. This could turn into the blowout it looked like it was going to turn into. And at that point, it's an embarrassing loss at home to a rival. That's ultimately what got Wade Phillips fired back in 1994. It was a 48-16 loss to the Raiders in week 4. He survived the season, but that was the image that wouldn't go away. You can talk about Spygate 2 with Josh McDaniels, but it was the 59-14 loss where Darren McFadden seemed to score every time he touched the ball at home to the Raiders. If this turns into an embarrassment, I don't know how you trot Nathaniel Hackett out there tomorrow afternoon to face the media. I just don't. Like, you have to do something just to do something. But look, the first drive is going to determine it, guys. Broncos get the football. If they go down and score and it's 27-21, all the pressure's on the Chiefs, and then we'll see what happens. Put me down for a 3-and-out. Put me down for a 3-and-out. That's what we're going to see. Then this thing's going to unravel, and it's going to turn into the blowout that we all thought it was going to be. And then heads should roll. Look, that was a fun couple of minutes. It was great to see Jerry Jeudy make some plays. It was nice that, me and the family are yelling and cheering and had something to get us, out of the slumber that we were in. But let's not kid ourselves. I think we all know where this is going. Short term, this game, and long term, this season, everybody needs to go. Heads need to roll. Russell Wilson can play, and the fact that they couldn't get any more than what they've gotten out of him, that's the number one reason to fire Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on team get rid of everybody for a while at this point, to the point where I've lost my voice. Like, there's no point in me yelling and hooting and hollering about it, right? No, I lost my voice because of Miko Rantanen's hat trick. That was pretty sweet. But yeah, guys, like, we all know it. the writing's all on the wall, and it's pretty shocking to me to think that Greg Penner wouldn't want to move on from these guys at the end of the year. And just looking at what happened in Boulder the last 6 months or so, the Buffs moved on from Carl Durrell when it became a national embarrassment, when the cost of having Carl Durrell as the coach became more so than the buyout. And that's when they moved on. And then with a stroke of luck and genius, they've somehow ended up with Deion Sanders. That can happen for the Broncos. The Broncos have way more history. The Broncos have, way more money than the Colorado Buffaloes. They can find a way out of this mess with just a name guy that comes in here and turns things around. So the question is, why not try? Because clearly what they're doing is not going to work. You are Patrick Mahomes trying to do too much away from this game already being a blowout. Patrick Mahomes is just messing around out there, right? Like, we all know it. Like, that's why this game is even close.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's a good point, is most teams when they play the Broncos, and it's why the Vic Fangio defenses stats were inflated, and even this year, most teams just go into a shell. Like, look, if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, if we don't beat ourselves, this Broncos offense can't beat us. Let's make them go 80 yards. For whatever reason, up 27-0, Patrick Mahomes was still tossed because Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes, they can't help themselves. That's the way they want to play. Look, if I'm a fan, I'd rather do that too. Like, hey, go out there and do what you do. Don't play conservative. But you're right. That's why this has even turned into a game. If they just start handing the ball off, this thing's 27-0 right now, and I'm screaming and yelling and calling for people to be fired at halftime, and that's what should be happening. It's a mirage. And look, it was a fun mirage. It was a fun couple of minutes there, and we saw some positives. Jerry Jeudy, positive that you mentioned, Jake. I think we saw positives out of Russell Wilson. Something to give you hope. But let's not be fooled by it. Let's not think that, oh, you know what, maybe Hackett knows what he's doing. And, no, this is a debacle. Will, you touched on it right out of the gate. Why was this at 2:05? How are you down 27-0 against your arch rival who you're trying to snap a 13-game win streak? Maybe it's because your head coach doesn't act like that's a big deal and doesn't seem to have a competitive bone in his body. Maybe.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. All right, we're getting up against it, so I'll give you guys about 30 seconds each here. Down 27-0. Josey Jewell gets the interception, and the whole team goes and celebrates in the end zone. Jake, start with you. Just how bad a look was that?
Oh, it was great because they increased their win probability from 1% to 1.5%. So, you really got to celebrate a big jump like that.
Yeah, I mean, just a bunch of guys that just prove they don't get it. They just don't get it. They just don't understand the optics of it. I mean, man, they're just clueless. And a team that, listen, you think that would happen on a Mike Shanahan coach team? You think that's happening if it's Bill Parcells or Bill Belichick or, I don't know, pick a guy from any era? It just wouldn't happen. And speaking of coaches, look what Kyle Shanahan is doing today with Mr. Irrelevant. That's what coaching can do. So don't tell me someone can't come in here and fix it. It's just Greg Penner needs to open up the pocketbook and do whatever he has to do to get Peyton Manning to run the show and talk some sort of big-time coach to come in here and take this thing over.
All right, it was fun. James Merrill, Jake Shapiro, I appreciate it. That was 104.3 The Fans Halftime Chill presented by Coors Light. Can the Broncos build on this momentum? We shall find out.